Well, hello. We are back with our educational series about all things health. Recognizing that peripheral neuropathy is just one part of our body, and when things go wrong, it means that there's other pieces of information we need to add to make you a whole person. Today I'm going to talk about ultra-processed foods. We call them UPFs. And there is a famous gal, she goes by the Food Babe. She's been in corporate medicine, if you will, for over 10 years. She was an individual who was on more than 10 pharmaceuticals in her 20s and had tons of healthcare concerns. And over time, as she cleaned her diet up and got off all processed foods, she was able to reduce all of her medications. So she's been into this for a lot longer than many people have even talked about processed foods, and she was deep into looking at what they're doing in what we call big food. For instance, they work really hard on cereals, let's say, to create something called bowl life, the life of the bowl, so as to keep the cereal crunchier for longer periods of time so that the children will yet eat more. Crazy, right? But they do all of these experiments, and they have all kinds of technological strategies to make it seem that this food tastes better longer. There's also something called vanishing food, like with Doritos and Cheetos, where they melt in your mouth and you almost feel like you are not eating anything at all, and so therefore you eat more. And we know about ultra-processed foods. They are generally foods that have been macerated, changed, chemicals added. They're in a box, they're in some plastic, but they certainly have had to go through multiple iterations to get to that ultra-processed fashion. And by the time they get on your shelf, the second they go in your mouth, boom, it turns to your blood sugars go through the roof, because there is no digestion needed before the blood sugar is released. Many of you may have heard about hormones that create a balance around our hunger. So there's something called ghrelin, made to make you hungry, like, oh, I'm hangry. And then there's something called leptin, which increases in our system when we feel sated, when we've had enough food. And we know that the UPFs, the ultra-processed foods, change those hormones notably. And in fact, that when you have ultra-processed foods, it tends to create this sensation that you have to eat more volume of food before the leptin increases. So when you take two groups of people, one eating ultra-processed and one not, guess what? The people eating ultra-processed food just simply eat more volume, 20 to 30% more volume, which means 20 to 30% more empty calories, which means 20 to 30% more obesity, which means 20 to 30% more inflammation. We are making a strong connection in this series between extra blood sugar in your body leads to inflammation, which leads to pain, which leads to inflammation, which leads to breakdown, which leads to arthritis, which leads to pain. There's just really nothing good about letting our blood sugars elevate. So recognize that when you sit down with a bag of chips or a bag of Oreos, you will never feel like you have reached that point of satiety until the bag is done. Have you ever noticed that? I had a girlfriend years ago. She had a little bit of a addiction to food, and she would feel super guilty about going to the store and buying the economy bag of chips, and would come home and rip it open and eat as quickly as she could. And finally the guilt would get so much that she would run to the sink, put some liquid detergent, and added water. That was the only thing that would make her stop, because in the food industry there's a group of individuals called flavorists, Flavorists, and their whole entire job is to figure out how to make you addicted to that food. And all of us, I'm sorry to say, all of us have experienced addiction, whether it's to some form of ultra-processed food or alcohol or smoking or some behavior that we're addicted to, where we're looking for that external fulfillment. And guess what? Ultra-processed foods never, ever give you that sense of fulfillment, nor does um, nor does alcohol or drugs that are recreational in nature. They all work in the same way. You can never get enough, so you just continue to destroy yourself. Most recently, in 2025, in December, San Francisco actually sued Kraft Food for the first time ever in the history. And they said, quote unquote, they're accusing them of knowingly sickening California residents with addictive and harmful products. Holy smokes. And I think you're going to see a big shift in this. So what am I asking you to do? I'm asking you to eat real food. Real food has no label on it. Real food has no ingredient list. You need to cook it. You need to prepare it. And just know when you're doing those things, you are lovingly giving your body what it needs, and you won't need to eat as much food, because when you take in dense nutrition, you get sated, your leptin elevates, your ghrelin drops, and you are good to go. So very important that you start becoming super aware of the fact when foods have been processed multiple ways and they don't look anything like the initial ingredients that went into them, you are not only elevating your blood sugars, but you're also increasing your omega-6s. And we'll have another video on that. Those of you in this program already have started to understand the power, the negative influence omega-6s from seed oils, how they have a negative influence on our inflammation and pain in our body. And the ultra-processed food people are smart. They're into making money. They do not use omega-3 oils to make their products. Why? Because they're more expensive. It's simple as that. So your goal is to eat in every meal something real, something that you picked up that does not have an ingredient list, like an apple or broccoli or celery or piece of fish or piece of chicken or some olives or a peach, right? All of those things will make your body so much happier, even though your mind is going to be kicking and screaming as you push away that potato chip bag. All right, good enough, you guys. Have a fabulous next few days.